Welcome back to Cards and Comics. And today I got a quick video that I promised in my 1960s Hall of Fame price update that I would do, which is SGC versus PSA comparison. Now, what I found going back to 21 versus 22 and just that made it so complicated to do the analysis between PSA and SGC. I decided just to do a 2022 price comparison of all Hall of Fame rookies from the 60s, SGC versus PSA. And there are some very interesting things I found. Now, this is the grades 6, 7, and 8. I say PSA 6, 7, 8, but it's really just the grades 6, 7, and 8. I should have just said that. So that was another mistake, which I seem to be making a lot of, but I'm trying to do this fast and not spending 45 hours on it because, as you can see, I'm not doing a PowerPoint. I'm not creating graphs and charts like I probably should have, but to me the analysis is so quick and so easy to go through. I didn't want to just spend hours making content for a 15 to 20 minute video that is pretty easy to be understood when you look at some of the numbers. Now, I want to talk about two things that stood out. One is, just the average price differences between the sell price of SGC and PSA right now in the different grades. Some cards sold above PSA pricing, specifically like the Juan Marichal was one card that stood out. The Willie McCovey SGC 8. But I want to talk about the yellow marks here on the table and this idea of availability. So we'll get into the summary data. So again, I point out some of the numbers here. So if you look at this column here, the percent difference is really, how much more or less percentage-wise the SGC cards sold in PSA. So again, the Willie McCovey SGC 6 sold first 97% of the PSA, but the 7 sold at 72%, but the 8 sold at 167%. And you're like, what's the deal? Well, a lot of it is because of the yellow marks, which is no data. NA, no data. And what I'm going to tell you is that in most cases, or in fact, in all cases for PSA, I could average the last 5 prices sold. Whereas in SGC terms, I just took all the data from 2022 because in a lot of cases, there's just 2 to 3 data points. And in some cases, there's 0, which is something we should talk about. For people who are the big SGC fanboys, you guys need to grade more cards. Especially vintage cards, because in some cases, like the 66 Jim Palmer rookie, there hasn't been a single SGC 8 card sold in 4 years. And so it just shows that for all the bluster and talk about how much people love SGC cards, they sure as heck aren't grading a whole lot of vintage cards or creating a lot of cards to be able to be sold because there's so many non-sales of these cards this year. Now, some other things that stood out was some really interesting things like the Pete Rose, right? Where the Pete Rose is a premier card. And it's a card that is valuable in all grades. And so you can see the 6 is still almost a $3,000 card in a PSA 6. But you can see the value difference between SGC and PSA in all grades. But the one that really caught my attention was the fact that it's under half the value of a PSA 8. And you got to remember, and this is, I keep driving it home over and over, and I hope everyone just understands this, that PSA 8 Pete Rose card is headed for somebody's Hall of Fame rookie registry. And that's why they pay so much more for that PSA. And that's why that 8, which is the min grade for a lot of these Hall of Fame rookie card collectors, for the registry, you got to have an 8 or better set. That's why that card is so expensive. And it just really hammers home that the Pete Rose is weighted really heavy in that set. And I know, sorry, not Hall of Fame rookie card set, but there is these, I believe it's the best 50 cards of Topps ever. Something. There's another set. I'm sorry, I mean Hall of Fame rookie card set. There's another set. There's like iconic card set that people compete heavy on, and this card is part of it. So, again, big time card. I know I threw it in the Hall of Fame rookie card set, but he's pretty much treated as a Hall of Famer. from how his cards are priced. He's in a bunch of other registry sets. But that's why it's so expensive. And that's why the registry really drives the value of some cards like that to you know, I think higher in value than they normally would be without it, honestly. Still to this day, it's still doing that. But moving on down the list, you can see some of the percentages are very low. Like here, the Gaylord Perry, you know, at 36%. Even in the 57%. Again, the 62s were very low in value. And it's the only year with the Lou Brock that didn't have an actual 6 sold this year. So, you know, if you get down to the summary stats, and you guys can look at the data here individually, and again, some cards like this, the PSA 6 crew was selling higher. So there is a lot of glimmers of hope here, where you can see a 63 PSA 6 Star Jewel and a PSA 8 Star Jewel are selling fairly close to comp. If you want to say 82% is close to comp, then it's selling close to comp. But then you look at cards like the PSA 8 Fergie Jenkins selling at 60% of comp. The Don Sutton at 50% of comp. The Nolan Ryan rookie selling at 56% of comp and a PSA 8. Now, if we look at in summary stats here, you can see that it's very much, if you were to average it all together, SGC cards are selling about 15% on average below the PSA. However, you know, there is, you know, in the PSA 8 world, there's this, you know, there is this Willie McCovey card here that sold for average of $41,000. There's 2 sales again, and so they sold very, very well, and they outsold the PSA, which had, you know, 10 plus sales this year, 2 versus 10. So the average price is $41,000 because someone's bid a lot of money on one of those cards. And so the average is $41,000, but again, based on 2 sales. So that's skewing the data a little bit, and the data is skewed a little bit for SGC because they don't have a lot of sales. And that's because no one is grading these kind of cards with them to the extent that they can sell a ton of them. And again, the numbers here on the right, you know, the 4, 16, and 40 are the percentage of cards missing that don't have data in each grade. So 40% of all Hall of Fame rookies from the 60s don't even have a sale in SGC. So 2/3, you know, of all Hall of Fame rookie cards are not even available, you know, in a SGC holder. 40%. You know, that's, you know, pretty bad, honestly. You know, pretty bad that you can't even get a 66 Jim Palmer. I believe one of the cards that was really interesting was a 65 Joe Morgan, right? One of the easier cards to find in PSA 8. You can't even get the card in an SGC holder sold this year. Not a single one's been sold. Now, you could say, well, people are holding on to them. The SGC guys are true collectors. They don't sell their cards. That's BS, guys. Come on. It's just because there's not a ton of them graded. There's not enough around to sell. And if the card was awesome to begin with, they're probably over in a PSA holder because there's still a pretty good value difference. And again, if I were to normalize the data, take out that 60, you know, if I took out the 60 McCovey, you know, from the data set, if I just delete that one line, and then all of a sudden, you know, you can see the difference, you know, goes up, you know, even more. So you can just see that it goes to, you know, less than 80%. So now it's 21% difference versus, you know, 14% difference. So 7% of variance comes from that one card in this data set. So it does skew the data. So I just wanted to give you this quick update. You know, I did make a comment on Neo's video where I said that is SGC selling at PSA prices. You should, it'd be a 20-second video with just the word no. No. On average, they're 15%. You know, if you just look at every card in totality, like we said, like an index, you know, you're going to lose 15% by going to PSA versus SGC on average. That's where we are. Some cards much more dramatic than others. Some cards are bringing more than PSA. Not many, but a few. So again, it matters, you know, who the card is and all that. So you gotta, you know, do your research and look at it. But if you just based on average, it's 15%. If you were to take out that William McCovey, it's closer to 21% on the PSA 8. So that's a pretty big number, 20% on a $2,000 to $5,000 card. That's enough money that most people would say it's significant enough for me to not grade with SGC. So again, SGC's got to fix the price gap. They also got to have more cards graded of these higher end vintage cards so that they can sell and have availability to sell. So that's the video. That's my take. So SGC is not closed the gap. And in some cases, the gap is widening a little bit. But the biggest issue to me is they just don't have enough cards available to really make a difference. Because, again, 1 or 2 sales in a year. And, again, the 66 Jim Palmer, one hadn't been sold in 4 years. That's not making them relevant. That's not making them a big player in these kind of cards. So that's my take. Let me know what you think in the comments. And again, I'm not trying to slam SGC. I'm just trying to give you guys the data and give you guys information on what's really happening, because this is just the information. Do with it what you want, but this is my interpretation of it and just present it to you guys. So let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll talk to you next time on Cards and Comics. Bye.